Hey guys, welcome to Card Corner. Today I'm just doing another Adventure Time Collector's Pack review. Now the one I'm doing today is the Finn and Jake one, which is the obvious first pack, and I'm basically quite a fan of this one, so there's going to be quite a positive review of this. So, like with all collector's packs, it comes with your 8 landscapes, your rulebook including checklists and card clarities, which is shared between the Finn and Jake one and the BMO and Lady Raidacon one. And it also comes with 2 decks, damage counters, and of course the red code card in the bottom, which will allow you to get a special powered up the pig card on the Adventure Time Card Wars app, should you be able to play that. Should you be willing to play that, rather. So I'm basically going to talk first about the Jake deck, because Jake is my favourite character, so I'm going to talk about that first. Now, unlike the Lemongrab and Gunter deck, which I've already done, this is more of an interesting, more of a basic starting point for new players, because there aren't a lot of fancy mechanics and odd sort of play styles in these 2 decks. It's basically just play characters and win games. And they do their own things, and they're definitely interesting and they're very good, but this basically focuses on raw power and raw and the Finn deck raw skill, rather than focusing on like the weird mechanics that the characters have in other ones. Another thing to note is that, as you may have noticed, there are no hero cards with this one. Now, this is because the hero cards were only introduced later on, and the Finn and Jake ones are included in Doubles Tournament and in the Collector's Pack, which came out afterwards, the Heroes Pack. So first of all, I'm going to talk about my favourite cards in this deck. There's a lot more of them in this deck than there were in, say, the Lemongrab deck. So first of all, I'm going to talk about Husker Worm. This is a very sort of main card in Card Wars, I suppose. You know, it's a big thing in the app and so on. And basically, it's a 1 action, 5 attack and 4 damage creature. Now, this 4 means it basically dies almost straight away, but the 5 attack means it can certainly do a lot of damage while it's there. It does flip a landscape down while it's here, which is going to minimize the amount of cornfields you have, because this deck doesn't really revolve around flipping landscapes up and down like the Lemongrab one does. It's like a minor sub-theme to the deck, so basically you're probably going to have that face down for the rest of the game. So there is that drawback to it, but it's probably not going to matter. The next thing I want to talk about is the sheer power of Travelling Farmer, who is a 2 action 2/12 character, who, when he leaves play, he deals 1 damage to your opponent for each card in his hand. So already he's got really good numbers for his action cost and a really good ability as well. So he is pretty strong stuff. And he has a similar effect to this, Field of Nightmares, which is a 1 action spell which does 1 damage to your opponent for each card in his hand. I can't tell you how many games I've won with this card, because it is just so bloody good. And it does combo pretty well with another card that I'll be talking about a bit later on. The next card I want to talk about is Carnotaur, which is a 2 action 2 attack 10 toughness creature, which deals 1 damage to your opponent for each cornfield you control when it comes into play. So you can do an easy 4 damage to your opponent straight off the bat before Carnotaur's even done anything, and for that reason he's a pretty good card. And the last card I picked out is Husker Knight. Now, I didn't like this guy for the longest time, but in reality, if you're playing 4 cornfields, he is a 2 action 4 attack 8 defense creature, and they are pretty good numbers. He can definitely do some stuff. Now, this has much fewer cards in it that I'd say were bad than in the Lemongrab deck, for example, but there are a few that I take issue with. First of all is Archer Dan. This is another big character on the apps and so on, and I just don't buy him, to be honest. He's 2 actions, 2 attack, 6 toughness, so his numbers aren't great for his action cost, and you can destroy a target building in his lane for no cost other than flooping him, which is pretty good, but it's going to depend on what your opponent's playing. Your opponent might not even be playing buildings, so for that reason I think it's not a particularly amazing card. The next one I want to talk about is Cornlord, which is a 1 action 7 toughness creature, which is not a bad start, but he basically only has 3 attack maximum if you have 3 other cornfield creatures on your field. And for this reason, I feel like he never really brings an awful lot to the game, and most of the time he's just there when you haven't got anything else to play. The next card I want to talk about is Cross-Pollination, because this is just a pointless card in this deck. Do you know how many times I've already said in this video if you have 4 cornfield landscapes? And this gives you plus 1 attack for each different landscape type you control, and face down does not count as a landscape type. So basically, you have +1 for 2 actions. I don't understand why it's in this deck. I don't think it's particularly a good card. And the next card I want to draw attention to is Reclaim Landscape, because again, you're not flipping landscapes up and down a particular amount in this deck, and it might be nice to move your buildings around as well, but to be honest, there aren't a whole bunch of buildings in this deck that are at all, but they definitely don't influence the deck in a particular way. You've got Celestial Castles, which are just good to have around, and I think that's it. So yeah, it might be nice to move them about, but the primary effect is completely pointless, and that's also why Bigfoot makes this list. Now, I'm not saying these are bad cards, they just don't have a place in this deck. When you flute Bigfoot, you can turn a face-down landscape you control face up. But again, it's not going to matter if you don't have any face down in the first place. One card I will want to talk about is Field Reaper. Now, this isn't a good or a bad card. It's a very conditional one. For the first time, I got its effect off the other day, and it won me a game. Not necessarily just because of that, but it definitely helped me to do it. So basically, you pay your 2 actions and you discard a card, and when he enters play, you move a target creature in the same lane to an adjacent lane on your side. So it's pretty conditional, because there isn't necessarily going to be a free lane for you to put him in with something on the other side, and a free lane on either side of it. So it is quite conditional. Furthermore, he's quite a weak character, so you're going to have to nick someone pretty good to make him worth the 2 actions on the discard. But they had to make this a bit more costly to play than, you know, just a simple steal your opponent's dude. And next I'm going to talk about the 3 cards that are, well, 4 cards that are my favourites in this deck. So Phyllis, who is just a simple rainbow creature who is incredibly powerful. Khorne Ronin, just because I think the concept of this is really dumb, and additionally it's a 3/6 for 1 action, which is not bad at all. Field Stalker, which I just really like the artwork of, and it combos well with Field of Nightmares and Traveling Farmer, because it essentially allows both players to draw a card at the start of your turn, so you're stacking up your opponent's hand, and it's quite tough as well, so it tends to be around for a good couple of turns, so you can draw your opponent's deck out a bit, and then hopefully you can burn him with Field of Nightmares as well. And the last card I want to talk about here is Patchy the Pumpkin. And I can't explain why this guy is so good, but he just is. Basically, you can flip him to deal 1 damage to a target creature, and you can do this as many times as you control landscapes, but you can only target each creature once. So you can basically do 4 damage to 4 creatures. Now, I don't know why this is so good, but he always seems to turn up at a point where he can have a big impact on the game. Other than that, there's not a whole bunch of things to talk about in the deck, because, as I say, there aren't a whole, like, massive mechanics and stuff to talk through, unlike the last set. So instead of doing anything else, I'm just going to move on now to the Fynn deck. Now, the Fynn deck, as I said earlier, is a deck that can be played incredibly well if you have good skill and capability with it. It just sort of clicked for me one day how it all works together, and it was really, really cool. And the way I play it is by abusing the hell out of Ward Talisman. This basically gives a blue plains creature +2 attack, and it costs nothing to play. So I combo this with Ancient Scholar, who allows you to return a random rainbow card from your discard pile to your hand, and if you control a building in this lane, you gain 1 action at the same time. So you can play like Celestial Castle to give him an extra 3, and then you're going to get an action back when you do the thing he's going to be doing anyway, which is really good. If you have multiple Ward Talismans, then, you know, you can get you know, it just helps the whole thing a lot better. And if you don't have any other rainbow cards in the way of him recycling it, then it's even better. I've also got Heavenly Gazer here, who floops to put a spell from your discard pile on top of your deck. So it's not as good as Ancient Scholar, because although you get more control over which card you get, you have to draw it again. But it's definitely good. If you have the two together, you could gain the extra action with Ancient Scholar to get one back. You could use his ability to get the other, and then you could use your new free action to draw a card to get the card into your hand. And the more Ward Talismans you have at any given time, the better it's going to play. And one thing that's really good is Psionic Architect. Now this is a 1-cost 2/6, which basically when it ends its play, you can ready or a flooped creature you control. So if you have already done Ancient Scholar, added this back and gained an action, you can play this with the action to do it all again and get your other Ward Talisman back. This is the first competitive deck I'm going to make once I finally dismantle all of these collector's packs. But yeah, I think it's really fun. And Dragonclaw is the next thing I want to talk about. This basically brings back the Wardiak mechanic from the Gunter and Lemongrab decks. Basically, you floop him to move a creature you control to an empty lane. And this combos with Wardiaks because they have abilities like, when it changes lane, draw a card. So basically, your two themes of the deck are changing lanes and recycling your Ward Talismans, basically. One thing that works really good with the Wardiak Talisman is this Wardiak Chief. So basically he's a 2/10, he does cost 2, but he's a 2/10. So you're going to play this and he's going to become a 4/10, and then because of his own ability, because you've played a spell, he's going to get +2. So it is possible if you can easily, if you have the 2 Ward Talismans in your discard pile to recycle, you can play both of them on him to give him, or to get him up to 6, and then he himself is going to put himself up to 10. So he's going to be a 10/10 in one turn, and that's going to be incredible. So he works really well. Now, there's not very many cards in this deck that I would say are bad. So the ones I've gone for are Uniknight, because it costs an action to put something's attack down by 10, and I just don't think it's particularly good. But its stats are not bad, and like I say, I definitely don't think it's a bad card. I just don't see a particular use for it. And the other card I've put in is the Pig. Now, this is quite a surprising one, but because all it does is flip a target cornfield landscape in this lane face down, it's very conditional. If you're not playing against cornfields, it's absolutely useless. So it's good in this pack, but that's about it. And also, cornfields can benefit from having landscapes face down. And just one card I want to talk about as well, as just a favourite again, is Gnome's Knot, which is a 1-action draw 3 cards. So rather than getting 1 card for your 1 action, you can get 3, which is just brilliant. There's also some other really cool cards in this deck, like Nice Ice Baby and Cool Dog, that just do sort of general things that I didn't really think were worth sort of pointing out individually. Struzan Djinn is quite strong as well. And yeah, so I think these two decks are incredibly good. I don't know which is better, personally. But yeah, they both seem to be pretty capable of winning games. The Jake deck is a lot more focused on power, and the Finn deck needs more sort of strategy to be played well to defeat the Jake deck. But they're both incredibly good, and they're both incredibly capable of winning. If you're looking for a Card Wars set to begin with, and you're looking at this video for that, I think this is definitely the one to start with, because you don't need to worry about remembering your hero cards. You don't need to worry about playing with weird mechanics or anything. And the decks don't really interact with each other in a particular way like some of the others do. But I definitely think they're two very strong decks that are going to give you a good start to the game. This has been Card Corner. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.